Do you believe in ghosts? I'm serious. How about, do you believe in angels? Guardian angels? Well, the cover photo of my 3 uncles has graced my Facebook account for a very special reason. And it's now time I explain why my Uncle Pete, my Uncle George, and my Uncle Alex Spanos are here with me. It's to honor them. You see, I've been waiting to share this, as my Uncle Pete Spanos passed on December 22nd, 2007, and recently my Uncle Alex, October 9th, and just more recently, my Uncle George, his brother, on December 30th. Thus why I am launching this now. Having had approximately 700 posts, inbox messages, emails, and texts from folks who expressed their sympathy for Uncle Alex's passing and who have shared their personal stories of kindness, generosity, and compassion, well, it's time to say I too have my own story, and it involves all 3 of these uncles. Mostly my Uncle Alex. It's a story very few know of, which I've decided that now it's time to share. And in sharing it, it illustrates the exceptional bond and love within the Spanos family. The concept of respect, love, and compassion for family, which these Spanos men held for each other and for their own. The validation in me sharing this, it's inside a golden moral, a moral to a story which I know for certain that every single person on this earth can learn from. I am certain of this. Starting with my dad, who remained as if he had an umbilical cord attached to his father, his brother, his sisters, his aunts and uncles and first cousins. He acted as if they were all connected, just like they did in their youth. Dad's first cousins would come to our home on El Dorado Street at times to visit, again where I listened to the cousins speaking Greek with each other, carrying on the life that their parents taught them. Uncle Alex had an office towards downtown on Park Street, and he came by maybe once every few weeks after work to say hello. As he passed our house on his way home, I always sat next to him, too young to understand his financial growth, just that his charisma was intoxicating. When he spoke, it was filled with emphasis and emotion, a lot of hand movements like Greeks do. He was just so interesting, dramatic, uplifting. My favorite expression he said often was, "I tell ya," with his hands lifted above his head like an exclamation point. As I grew into my adult life, I'd seen my uncles off and on, and they were just so lovely to me. I'm sure they were to all the nieces, yet I believe because I had been around them the most as a child with Dad's visits that they had a more familiar connection to me. So as an adult, they spoke to me with more familiarity. Moving way forward, years later, I became a single mom of 4 sons. One diagnosed with juvenile diabetes right on his 8th birthday. I was receiving no child support nor court-ordered health insurance. I worked 2 to 3 jobs as much as I could to support the 4 boys and myself. A given day for me was up at 7 a.m., taking the boys to school, working, picking them up after school, fixing dinner, sleeping for a few hours, then off to San Francisco by 8 p.m. to start my radio show. And I returned at 3:30 in the morning. Then I slept for a few hours to begin this cycle all over again. Many times I slept at the top of the Altamont for a few minutes to close my eyes, which I could barely remain open, and with the air conditioner on in the dead of winter. Falling into broadcasting with Clear Channel gave me the remarkable gift to be working for 98.1 KISS FM, the only Clear Channel station in the San Francisco cluster, which was a part of the AFTRA Union. This is the American Federation of Television and Recording Artists, where I was provided union wages, which were incredible, and I was offered the most wonderful full benefits for my family. Let me pause for a moment. My father taught me one day when he was in the kitchen and I was on the couch a huge lesson. I asked him, "Dad, can you bring me a glass of water?" He replied, "No, you can get it yourself. Don't ever ask anyone to do for you what you can do for yourself, as the day may come when you need help and you want people to believe you." The point was to be independent, self-sufficient, and to never exceed my capabilities to burden anyone. At the end of 1997, one of my sons was hospitalized for 2 weeks. The medical bills were mounting. Early January 1998, I decided for the first time to ask Uncle Pete if I could ask Uncle Alex for a $10,000 loan to be repaid in 90 days. And if so, I wanted a legal form as a promissory note drafted to prove that I borrowed this loan and that I repaid it. Uncle George, the attorney in the Spanos family, and the sweetest, kindest, most soft-spoken man, met me in his office where I did sign this promissory note and was handed this check for $10,000. They put a 1-year due date, which was their decision. I requested only 90 days. On March 30th, 1998, 75 days later, I was ready to repay him. I asked to meet all 3 uncles at Uncle Alex's office to hand him this check. The time was set, and we all met. Uncle Alex was standing at the top of this very long conference table with Uncle George. They walked halfway to meet me. I walked the other half to meet them. I told him that I had asked for this time to give him back the $10,000 loan with the interest of the 75 days in person because I needed to express my gratitude, and I handed him the check. Well, Uncle Alex refused to take it back. He put his hand down so not to give the check to him. Again, I tried to give him the check, and he refused, and I started to tear up. And I told him, I've never asked anyone to do for me what I could not do for myself, as Dad taught me. I knew I was able to repay you, and this is why I was confident to ask for help. He looked at Uncle Pete behind me, and he started to tear up himself. He reached out to me and hugged me, saying he did not want the money back. I will never forget this day. He told me that many have asked him for loans, financial help, knowing that he could help them, and he did not care, he wanted to. And many who promised to repay have never returned the respect by repaying him or telling him that they were sorry they could not. He said that I honored him with the highest respect to give him this check with the interest with the 75 days. But again, he refused to take it back. Now, he's still holding on to me. I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, if you don't take this money back, you will block my blessings. I borrowed this knowing I was able to repay you, and I really need more blessings. He took my hand and he kissed it. He placed his other hand on top of mine and said, honey, you ever need anything, you hear me? You come to me or you tell Uncle George or Uncle Pete. You hear me? I tell ya, I never expected this from you. You've shown me the utmost respect. Tears were still streaming down my face from the gratitude for his believing in me to help me. I hugged and kissed each uncle, thanked them all again, and left. By the way, to that date, he was the only man that ever kissed my hand too. I was working for Clear Channel Radio in San Francisco. My 2 shows either began at 6 p.m. where I'd be off at 10 p.m. or it started at 10 p.m. where I would be off at 2 a.m. So one day, going to the early show, I stopped into Lebu to pick up a croissant to eat during my show, and I heard my name. They were all there, all of my uncles, Uncle Alex, Uncle Pete, Uncle George, and Uncle Gus Vadenas. I did not know that at 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, they met for coffee. I was so happy to see them. Well, they were so happy to see me too. One got me a chair, asking how I was, how was work, how were the boys, and Uncle Alex stood up and he took my hand and he kissed it again. He said, I've been hearing some great things about you, honey. I think you're going to be more famous than I am. I was shocked as all the uncles chimed in as if they were agreeing with him that yes, that was right. I said, no, Uncle Alex, oh my goodness, this will never happen. But thank you for saying so because your support means so much to me. He was still holding my hand and he said in a very serious tone, just to me directly, honey, you ever need anything, you know what to do. I'm here for you. Don't forget it either. And gee, you look great. Later on that year, Uncle Pete called to say he was coming over. Asking why, he had no response. He just said he was on his way. I was so afraid of bad news. He told me that Uncle Alex had asked him to come to me and see what I needed financially, to write checks, and he would reimburse Uncle Pete. Make no mistake, this was an order for me to get my bills out. I told him, I have no credit cards. I have no bills outside of my living expenses. He wrote checks to zero balances on PG&E, water, garbage, Comcast, paid up all of the co-pays on medical bills, and then 3 months of rent, 3 months of car payments, 3 months of car insurance. Not a penny was handed to me as cash for anything, food or gas. I was humbled and overwhelmed by Uncle Alex's generosity, his compassion. It almost embarrassed me that he and they were actually caring for me. I was so grateful and starstruck, amazed that anyone would do for me as they did. And I never did ask for a penny, ever. A year or so later, Uncle Pete called me again, and the exact same thing was done. Again, the next year, Uncle Pete called me, and the exact same thing was done. And for the fourth time, it happened again. All bills paid and not a penny to me. Every time Uncle Pete came and left, I was overwhelmed with a heart-filled gratitude that left me speechless for days, forever, to date. I've really never told my sons. Even to this day, they do not know what I'm sharing here. I kept it all between us and just stayed humbled by it all. Uncle Pete told me that he and Uncle George and Uncle Alex talked often and kept tabs on me, as they knew I was working 7 days a week on 5 radio stations, traveling every single day out of Stockton. Since Dad died in 1992, Uncle Pete, his brother, stepped in, and he was like a papu to my sons. He watched over us just as if we were his own. Actually, he repeated what Dad said and what Uncle Alex said in his tribute video at his celebration of life ceremony, that family is number one. We are each other's priority. My father preached this always. Family is number one, and no one will ever speak against them ever in my presence. And he meant the entire family, everyone. Uncle Alex made a difference with my 2 other uncles, greater than I ever could have imagined in my life as a single mom, struggling to raise these boys on my own. My appreciation to Uncle Alex, Uncle George, and Uncle Pete is deep within my heart. And listening to Uncle Alex speak in the video that we saw at his celebration of life ceremony, I closed my eyes and I heard my dad. Family was his number one focus and priority, as were all with the Spanos men. I've spent my years with my sons teaching and reinforcing this, which Dad and all the Spanos family held on to, the protection that family gives. So I have one last story to share. When I was an on-air broadcaster with Clear Channel, I would receive calls from listeners, actually accumulatively 10 million strong, between San Francisco, Sacramento, New Mexico, and whoever logged on the internet. And they would ask, are you related to the Spanos who owns the Chargers? And I recorded these calls so I could run them back going into the next break. Like a computerized response, I'd say to them, yes, he's my uncle, and he's been wonderful to me, compassionate, caring, and loving. I don't have his money, so you're going to have to like me for who I am. They would laugh and say, oh, you're so lucky. And I'd respond, I am, as all of the Spanos men are angels, cut from a very special mold that does not exist any longer. So the moral is obvious. Repaying that $10,000 loan answered my blessings tenfold, because it said, for every blessing you answer, yours are answered tenfold. Well, this was proven to me to be true. And for me, confirming their respect in me was pure gold. So in life, as we travel through this and people reach out to help, I rarely take them up on it, because I really try my best to be self-sufficient. But I want to say this. When it does happen, it is of the utmost importance to be appreciative, and to do so with dignity and grace, as those who help us are owed every moment of gratitude in our being, and they're owed it forever.